And now to tonight's big story. Hundreds of Hoosiers joining this debate over an Indiana education bill that has caught nationwide attention. We're talking about House Bill 1134. This would allow parents to opt out of certain lessons and social emotional learning activities for their kids. It could also impact what schools can teach your children and how they teach it. So tonight, we want to dig into the two opposing sides on this issue and uncover how critical race theory fits into it all. Our Logan Gay starts us off tonight with this divide between supporters and critics on this controversial bill.
It was a long day here at the State House, with more than 200 people signing up to speak about an education bill targeting what topics are taught in school and how. Supporters of House Bill 1134 say the goal is all about parental input, but critics at the State House today called the bill unnecessary.
Parents already have the rights to be on committees. They have the right to see instructional materials and sit on textbook adoption committees. And I know there are procedures in place for grievances.
Already, state lawmakers are changing the bill to address teacher concerns. Lawmakers approved an amendment today, removing language letting parents sue over violations of the bill and getting rid of requirements for schools to be impartial when teaching historic events. But a section about divisive concepts was left in.
The requirements around what teachers can and can't teach implies that CRT is being taught. The fact is, it is not. This is a false narrative that has been used to justify bills such as this one.
The best teachers I had in school, really you couldn't tell whether they were Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal. They came into the view and gave you both sides of any topic that you're discussing. And I think the vast majority of Hoosiers could agree that that's really what we want in our teaching environment. Unfortunately, parents are seeing more and more that's not happening any longer, that there's a one-sided view on very controversial issues.
But despite the changes to the bill today, critics say they're still concerned, calling it an act of censorship intended to reduce meaningful conversation.
What are you going to take out? That 1 + 1 = 2 or slavery? In my opinion, you just can't take out something because you just don't like it.
My grandchildren need to receive a more complete understanding of history than I received. We need to make room for meaningful conversations surrounding race, not limit those conversations.
Now, the creation of House Bill 1134 follows months of debate about critical race theory. Now, this topic has exploded all across social media, even reaching local school board meetings, even though countless grade schools here in Indiana have said it's not part of their curriculum. So what is critical race theory? Turns out it's been around for decades. So why is it such a political lightning rod right now? Emily Longnecker stopped by IUPUI tonight, where community leaders really dug into what this concept is and why it's led to such a divide in school districts.
Critical race theory, those three words have ignited a lot of debate across the country about how history and race are discussed in classrooms. Wednesday, a public forum here at IU McKinney School of Law to discuss what critical race theory is and what it isn't. Indiana lawmakers, professors, and scholars tackled the topic, presenting different points of view.
History is not disconnected from where we are today. History is what produced where we are today.
IU Law School professor Kevin Brown was part of a gathering in 1989 of law professors of color, where critical race theory was first discussed. It was a discussion by these same legal minds that continued over several workshops.
We were mostly driven by the reality that what we saw was American society had simply normalized the idea that black people were supposed to have less.
Brown said one only has to look at history to understand why disparities for people of color still exist today.
We talk about history to understand how we've gotten to where we've gotten in the present. We do not talk about history to blame people in the present for what happened in the past.
The concepts behind critical race theory have ignited a firestorm of controversy, with some state legislatures trying to pass laws to control how teachers talk about history and race.
CRT is not about teaching the contribution of Black Americans or immigrants like me.
Michael Gonzalez, a senior fellow with the conservative think tank The Heritage Foundation, has traveled the country recently speaking against CRT to parents and state lawmakers.
CRT is a tool to change society, another instrument to tear down the narrative of American history and culture and replace it with a counter-narrative. What the architects of critical race theory really want is ideological conformity around the views of the left.
One of those architects, Professor Brown, explains CRT this way.
What it's not is a blame game about people today, but what it is a need to really consciously examine our history.
A history, Brown says, has led to disparities for Black Americans that exist today and need to be addressed.
We never really confronted them. We never really put them to bed.
Now, the state of Indiana is far from the only state considering legislation inspired by critical race theory debates. Chalkbeat started tracking bills and policies across the country. Here's what they found. 36 states with efforts to restrict education on racism and bias. Indiana among them. Now, on the flip side, the group found 17 states working to expand education in those very areas. For a closer look at critical race theory and its impact on House Bill 1134, just go to WTHR.com and click on this story.